Move to approve the agenda and consent agenda as published.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And that motion passes unanimously. Our next agenda item is under public recognitions and presentations. First up, under public recognitions and presentations, we usually have a Lacey Youth Council report. Are the youth ready to report? Looks like they're coming out now. We'll just give them a minute to get in position. Go ahead. You're up first. We start with the youth.
Hello, my name's Rory Line. I'm a junior at Timberland High School, and I'm a council member in the Lacey Youth Council. I'm here to give you guys my report. Our musical Pippin officially starts tomorrow. All our winter sports have either sent a single athlete to state or have sent a whole team to state. On February 10th, we had our Cupid's Court dance, which was successful. February 3rd was the last day of this semester one, which brings me to my main topic. On the Wednesday after the start of the second semester, we had a slideshow going over the expectations of being a Timberline student. We had the usual talk: don't eat in the bathroom, don't wreck the bathroom, don't leave your trash everywhere, be nice to people. The average thing you would tell a teenager. During the slideshow, they talked about not blocking the doors for safety reasons, which was reasonable, but something stuck with me. On January 19th, we had a lockout emergency. The threat was a few miles away, but still was close enough to put the school through an unsuccessful lockdown. I use the word unsuccessful because it was not up to date for a safety protocol. This happened during second lunch, so around 300 to 400 students were wandering the halls or eating in the commons. Those students were in the commons for around 2 hours, with the doors wide open, inviting any and everyone inside. They looked at the adults for help, but the adults had nothing. They had no training on this topic. They were telling students that they could either go home or they can stay. It was really up to them. We luckily had the threat, like I said, a few miles away, so the students were were not in danger. However, if the threat was closer, the students would have been in a lot of danger. Hopefully next time we will be better prepared for an emergency like this one. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, council members and everybody sitting in here today. My name is Zuri Ramirez, and I am speaking on behalf of North Thurston High School. The Future Business Leaders of America held a winter leadership conference with many of North Thurston students placing first, including one of our members here on the Lacey Youth Council. In terms of athletic news, our girls basketball team will play for district championships this weekend at Auburn High School. Our gymnastics team competes in districts tonight in Puyallup, and the golf team will hold an informational meeting for the upcoming spring season. Our drama department they've recently opened their late winter show called The Importance of Being Earnest. Maybe some of you have heard about it. And it's a story of two men leading double lives filled with witty humor. Our Black Student Union celebrates Black History Month today with school-wide themes such as Throwback Thursday and Blackout Friday. It encourages all students to dress up to spread awareness. And finally, our school-wide winter dance is being hosted by the school tomorrow night, with many students looking forward to a fun, laid-back evening. That'll be everything for North Thurston High School. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Hi, Council. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. First, I want to say Happy Black History Month. I appreciate all of you guys and your willingness to hear youth perspectives. My name is Rihanna Joseph. I am a senior at River Ridge High School, and I am also a Running Start student. Because I am a full-time Running Start student, I don't attend my high school regularly. However, from other students, I've gotten some input on what's going on at the school. I am a National Honor Society member, and we recently had a Valentine's for Vets event in which our club wrote Valentines for local veterans at JBLM and emergency service workers. Tonight we have our unified basketball game, Pack the Gym event, where all students and staff come to support our special needs basketball team. Lastly, our cheer team placed 9th in their national level competition. Thank you.
Thank you, Youth Council. Our next agenda item is under public comment, and I have the public comment sheet, sign-up sheet. There are 16 names on here, and I just wanted to confirm that each of those 16 people was actually coming to, or signed up on here to actually give a public comment, or was it in support of another item on the agenda? So if I call your name and you are here to support an agenda item, then you don't need to come up to the podium. But if you are here for a separate public comment, then please come to the podium, and you can use about 3 minutes and just say your name and what city you live in. First on this list is Melvin Butler. Were you coming to speak or in support of an item? Okay. Next on the list, Andre Alexander. Okay. Next on the list is it Haram Jackson? Horam Jackson, Mr. Jackson? Nixon Carroll?
And support, sir.
Okay. And Reggie Davis? And Reggie Shegog? And I'm having a hard time reading this name. Is it Linnea? Okay. And Ray Gertman? Philip Gaines Jr.? Dick Rust. Is it Mindy Fraser? Okay. And James Barrett, or is it, am I saying that right? Is it Brown? My apologies. Roger Schlessel. Okay. Hank Shegog. Hank Shegog? Are you wishing to come forward and address this council? Or are you in support of an item? Okay. Lester Dixon?
Support, I just wanted to hear my name.
Okay. And finally, Steve Dolan. Okay. Then we will retire that list, and we will move on to our two virtual pre-registered. After we do the virtual. We have two virtual pre-registered to speak in public comment in our Zoom. And if our technician would bring in the first speaker, it looks like on our list we have Brandy Hansen.
Brandy is not on the Zoom yet, but Jeff Lawyer should be on the way in.
Okay, then Jeff can go first.
Hi. First of all, I apologize for not being there in person. I have a pretty good cold going, so I didn't want to infect anybody. Number one, I'd like to thank the city council members for their work in making our community such a great place to live. I live in unincorporated Thurston County, but consider Lacey my home. Mostly, I just have a quick note that in the midst of the current gun violence epidemic, I'm just made to see gun shows hosted at the Lacey Fairgrounds. This leaves me frustrated at our community's lack of response to an ongoing threat to public safety. I'm just requesting that you do what you can to stop those shows at the fairgrounds. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your comment. Our next public comment is Brandy Hansen.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, they're still not present on the Zoom.
Okay. Well, I don't want to, her to miss her opportunity to speak. Maybe we can move on to another agenda item. Okay. And then, is there anyone else in the room wishing to address this council tonight? Okay. Seeing none, then we will move on to our next agenda item, which is under proclamations. And our first proclamation is our Black History Month proclamation. starting with Councilmember Vasquez.
Whereas during Black History Month, also known as African American History Month, the many achievements and contributions made by Black and African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development are celebrated. And
whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, a noted African American historian, scholar, educator, and publisher, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History and initiated Negro History Month in 1926, selecting the month of February to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And in 1976, Black History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of Blacks in American history and beyond, advance the cause of civil rights, and strengthen families, communities, and the nation. And
whereas the first enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas 403 years ago, marking the beginning of legalized slavery, which continued with the founding of the United States of America and was legal in the country until the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. And
whereas since the abolishment of slavery, many iterations of racist laws and policies were instituted across the country that served to disenfranchise Blacks and African Americans from full political, economic, educational, and social opportunities. And
whereas, in spirit of these abhorrent attempts to enslave and then exclude them as a result of their determination, hard work, and perseverance, Blacks have made invaluable and lasting contributions to our community, the state, the nation, and the world, achieving exceptional success in all aspects of society, including business, education, politics, science, medicine, the military, sports, and the arts. And whereas the Association of the Study of African American Life and History's 2023 theme is Black Resistance, and
whereas the Lacey City Council is committed to creating a community where all who come here can feel safe and welcome, and that the observance of Black History Month calls our city's attention to the continued need to dismantle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals. Now, therefore, I, Malcolm Miller, Deputy Mayor, City of Lacey, on behalf of the Lacey City Council, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in the City of Lacey, and will urge all community members to recognize the continued need to dismantle racism and build a society that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. Thank you. And so I wanted to issue this official City of Lacey proclamation to Mr. Melvin Harris.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Melvin Butler, sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, so I wanted to, from the City of Lacey to you and your lodge, thank you so much for all that you do for our community. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for receiving this proclamation from the City of Lacey. Would you care to say a few words?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen, Chief. This is a historic moment, and definitely in my life, and basically my lodge, Fred U. Harris Lodge number 70. I really appreciate this. This is excellent, but I cannot do all of this as the head of the lodge. I'd like to recognize the brothers from Fred U. Harris Lodge number 70. Can you please stand? Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
From what I understand, there was another member of your lodge coming to give a speech tonight.
Yes, I repassed Grandmaster Sheikah. I was going to give a speech on Black History.
Okay, is that still happening tonight?
Yes.
It is. Is it possible that can happen now?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
Yes.
Please.
He's the brain. He's the brains of us.
Okay.
Are you calling for me?
Yes, that's it. Deputy Mayor for
Deputy Mayor?
That's me, sir.
I'm Hank Shigag, a member of Fred U. Harris Lodge number 70. I was asked by our worshipful master, Melvin Butler of Fred U. Harris Lodge number 70, Prince Hall affiliated, to give another talk on Black History Month to the Lacey City Council. I contemplated with the subject for quite a while, wondering what I might say this time that would be inspiring but not necessarily be new to the council. What could I say that I have not been said already for Black History Month? Then it dawned on me that this month has not always been known as Black History Month. Therefore, before we can fully appreciate Black History Month of 2023, we need to revisit the old Negro History Week. Negro History Week was established in 1926 as the second week of February. That week was chosen because it coincided with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president, on February the 12th, and Frederick Douglass' birthday on February 14th, both of which dates Black communities have celebrated together since the late 19th century. In other words, the precursor of Black History Month was created in 1926 in the United States, when historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson, a Black man of 51 years of age, along with the Association of Study of Negro Life and History, announced the second week of February as Negro History Week. Please note, I said Negro History Week. It wasn't until 1970, 20 years after the death of Dr. Carter Woodson, that we as a nation started celebrating Black History Month. Although it was proposed by Black educators and Black United students at Kent State University in February 1969, the first celebration of Black History Month took place at Kent State University 1 year later, January 2, 1970 to February 28, 1970. 6 years later, in 1976, Black History Month was celebrated all across the country in educational institutions, centers of Black culture, and community centers, both great and small. I remember when President Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month during the celebration of the United States bicentennial. He urged America to seize this opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. I was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington at the time, now called Joint Base Lewis McChord, and I recall vividly the Freedom Train that traveled throughout the states coming to North Fort Lewis and staying for quite a while, displaying many of the artifacts that had been generated and saved over the 200 years of our existence. One thing that was particularly noteworthy for me were the basketball sneakers of Bob Lanier, a professional basketball player that was on display, and I thought the 22-inch Converse sneakers was quite striking at the time. Incidentally, Bob Lanier played with the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks from 1970 to 1981. As you recall, I mentioned earlier that President Gerald Ford suggested that America should seize this opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishment of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Listed herewith are some of the accomplishments of African Americans that you may not be familiar with and or perhaps may again need to be refreshed. You don't know what you don't know. Here are some Black historical facts. For example, did you know that Madame C.J. Walker was America's first woman to become a self-made millionaire? Or that George Washington Carver was able to derive nearly 300 products from the peanut? Heavyweight champ, did you know that Jack Johnson became the first African-American man to hold the world heavyweight champion boxing title in 1908? By the way, he held on to that belt until 1915. First American African lawyer, John Merchant Lanston, was the first Black man to become a lawyer when he passed the bar in Ohio in 1854. And when he was elected to the post of town clerk of Brownheim, Ohio in 1855, Langston became one of the first African Americans ever elected to public office in America. Mercer Langston was also the great uncle of Langston Hughes, famed poet of the Harlem Renaissance. Famous protesters. Did you know that while Rosa Parks is credited with helping to spark the civil rights movement when she refused to give up her seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, inspiring the Montgomery bus boycott, lesser-known activist Claudette Colvin, a 15-year-old schoolgirl, was arrested 9 months before Rosa Parks widely disseminated stand for refusing to move to the back of the bus. When the bus driver ordered Claudette to get up, she said, "It felt like Sojourner Truth was on one side pushing me down, and Harriet Tubman was on the other side pushing me down. I couldn't get up." Supreme Court Justice, did you know that Thurgood Marshall was the first African American ever appointed to the United Supreme Court? He was appointed by President Lyndon Baines Johnson and served on the court from 1967 to 1991. By the way, Brother Marshall was also a Prince Hall Mason. Eminent scientists. George Washington Carver developed 300 derivative products from peanuts, among them cheese, milk, coffee, flour, ink, dyes, plastic, wood stains, soap, linoleum, medicinal oil, and cosmetics. African American head coach of the National Football League. Did you know that Tony Dungy was the first African American head coach to win Super Bowl 41 in 2007? Our first black senator, Hiram Rose Revels, was the first African American ever elected to the U.S. Senate. He represented the state of Mississippi from February 1870 to March of 1871. First black woman representative, Shirley Chisholm, was the first African American woman elected to the House of Representatives. She was elected in 1968, and represented the state of New York. She broke ground again 4 years later in 1972 when she was the first major party African American candidate and the first female candidate for the President of the United States. Self-made millionaire. Did you know that Madame C.J. Walker was born in a cotton plantation in Louisiana and became wealthy after inventing a line of African American hair care products? She established C.J. Walker Laboratories and was also known for her philanthropy. Oscar winner. In 1940, Hattie McDaniel was the first African American performer to win the Academy Award, the film industry's highest honor for her portrayal of a loyal slave governess in Gone with the Wind. First black billionaire. Before Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jordan joined the Bibliania Club, Robert Johnson became the first African American billionaire when he sold the cable station he founded, Black Entertainment Television, commonly referred to as BET. First black president. In 2008, Barack Obama became the first black president of the United States. He was also the first African American president of Harvard Law Review in 1990. Population growth. The black population in the United States in 1870, 5 years before Dr. Carter Woodson was born, was 4.8 million. In 2017, the number of black residents in the United States was 41.4 million. I suspect that when we take the census in 2030, we will find that black population will be much greater than the 4.41 million reported in 2017. Black History Month theme. Since 1976, every American president has designated February as Black History Month and endorsed a specific theme. The Black History Month theme for 2020 was African Americans and the Vote. It is in honor of the centennial anniversary of the 19th Amendment of 1920, granting women suffrage, and the centennial of 1870, granting women, giving black men the right to vote. And even though Black resistance is the theme for 2023. The 2020 theme, African Americans and the vote, may have been an excellent theme for this year's Black History Month also, especially with the challenges we are now facing in today's voting irregularities throughout these United States. In closing, it is my hope that the foregoing bits of information shed a little light on some important facts, some of which you may or may not have been aware of. You see, you really don't know what you don't know. Thanks for your indulgence.
Finally, we, the members of Fred U. Harris Lodge and the Prince Hall Masonic family, thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to continue to work with the city of Lacey. We recognize the city of Lacey and commend them because they established the Commission on Equity in 2021. That shows the commitment that the city of Lacey has towards its diverse citizens within its bounds. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. And of course, baseball season is coming up, so go Mariners.
Walk the line.
And then have a photo up front. Would you guys mind shaking hands, come and walk the line? It's something that we do at the end of Proclamation. And afterwards, we'll do a picture? Okay. All 16 of you, please. I know.
Thank you for your service.
What's your name? Nixon? Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, sir. Thanks for coming, man. Nice hat.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for being here. Thank you very much.
Stick around, guys. We're going to take a picture, okay?
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your work, sir. I much appreciate it.
Don't go too far away, you guys. We're going to take a picture.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you.
We can do a picture with the Harris Lodge members.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Next turn. As soon as the Super Bowl
So you're the interim city?
I am now, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, you got a job.
I know. For the interim.
And I will not try to add anything to that. And with that, we will move on to our next agenda item. We have another proclamation tonight. And this proclamation, I like to call the Drejos Proclamation. And we will start with Councilmember Vasquez.
Whereas Harvey Drejos born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, on January 5th, 1923, was witness to two defining moments of his generation: the Great Depression as a child and the start of World War II when he was 18 years old. And
Whereas Harvey Dreyhus served his country from 1943 through 1946 as part of the 96th Infantry and fought on the lines during the invasion of Okinawa, Japan in April 1945, a battle that claimed the lives of 7,294 soldiers in his division and wounded Harvey in combat. And
Whereas Harvey Dreyhus' bravery and valor during the Battle of Okinawa in World War II earned him a collection of medals and commendations, including the Bronze Star Medal. And
Whereas Harvey Dreyhus celebrates his 100th birthday on January 5th and is the last living member of his military unit. And
Whereas Harvey Dreyhus has filled many roles in his lifetime, including soldier, scholar, philanthropist, motorcycle police officer, pilot, trusted chiropractor, proud father, Rotarian, Kiwanian, and a beloved friend. And
Whereas Harvey Dreyhus remains an active and cherished member of the Kiwanis Club of Thurston County after 53 years and continues to support community service, student leadership, and making our world a better place. And now, therefore, I, Malcolm Miller, Deputy Mayor of the City of Lacey, on behalf of the City of the Lacey City Council, do hereby proclaim February 16th, 2023 as Harvey Dreyhus Day in the City of Lacey. And encourage community members, local veterans, and local veteran organizations to celebrate Harvey Dreyhus' 100th birthday and learn more about the history of World War II and the service of men and women who were at Harvey's side throughout those years. Would you like to come and receive this yourself? Yes. Thank you so much for World War II. Thank you for serving our country.
We had a lot of good comrades there that were in my outfit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to say a few words to the crowd?
Okay.
Yeah.
Recently, I turned to be 100 years old, so it's nice to speak to a group that's so young. This is very precious to me due to the fact I'm still alive. My comrades, unfortunately, are not. And they really deserve this probably more than I. But they were really tough infantry fighters in Okinawa. The 381st, 382nd, and 383rd Infantry Regiment. My comrades, unfortunately, 7,000 were, 10,000 killed, wounded, or missing in action. And so just a moment of silence for them. Thank you, dear Lord. I will cherish this the rest of my life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lord.
So I understand you found a photo album on the field. Yeah. And you were able to return it to the Congress.
Yes.
I heard Congresswoman Strickland talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
In Congress.
Yeah, Congresswoman Strickland's office has just been fantastic.
Thank you.
it's an honor.
Do you guys mind if we get a picture? Absolutely. Is that okay?
Picture.
Mind if we take a picture with you as a council? Can I have a dozen? You can. Come over to the middle.
Harvey, that old saying, even Marines need heroes, might have some, might carry some weight in this instance.
There you go.
I got the honor of listening to Congresswoman Strickland's speech on the floor about Harvey Dreyhus, and the few things that she had to say. One of them was about a photo album that was found on the battlefield that Harvey found and was able to return it to the family. Just the kind of guy he is and was, and still serving in this community. So thank you for all that you've done, sir. Our next agenda item is under resolutions. And in resolutions, we have, well, I guess I was looking for Mr. Devlin, but I don't. Is he is here? Okay. And as soon as we have some clearing, Mr. Devlin will come and give his presentation about the Toro Sentinel sole source resolution.
Good evening, City Council, Acting City Manager, and fellow citizens. My name is Scott Devlin. I'm Operations Manager for the City of Lacey, and I wanted to come before you tonight to seek approval for Toro Sentinel sole source purchasing through H.D. Fowler. But before I ask for that permission, I want to go through a little history here for the irrigation system. Let's see. Go forward. So the City of Lacey has currently 83 irrigation systems. 69 have the Toro Sentinel Central Irrigation Control System. We have 1,266 zones, over 20,000 sprinkler heads, and 152 drip irrigation systems also. We use about 8 million gallons on average a year of water. And so to kind of put that in perspective here, there's a picture of McAllister Reservoir at 1.2 million gallon capacity. And I believe this is Jamie Oakland standing at the bottom of that. It's a lot of water, right? Oops, go backwards. So I mentioned Toro Sentinel here. We currently use Toro Sentinel controllers for 69 of our centrally located irrigation systems, which allows us a lot of usability for our technicians out in the field. The other ones that are not centrally located, we have to drive to the site and manually check them on a regular basis. The city's been using Toro Sentinel for over 15 years. The old system was called Econ, and the Econ was purchased by Toro back in 2002, and we switched over from Econ to Toro Sentinel between 2002 and 2005. So Toro Sentinel gives us many different things that we can do to this with our technicians. One, we can monitor for leaks. And what that does is we get a report every single day that tells us you're using too much water or you're not using enough water. So we do have irrigation heads that if they do get vandalized or a mower hits them, they'll shut off. Other irrigation heads, when they do get broken, they just spray up in the air like a geyser. So with monitoring that, we can keep on top of our water conservation really, really well. The system will shut itself down after you get 3 zones in a row that have overflow. It just shuts it off and it won't run again that night. And so we can come in and there's a major water main break or something like that in the irrigation system. That could be, thousands of gallons of water that we can save for the system. We're also able to remote control change percentages of usage throughout, the season by just the click of a button from one central computer for those 69 different systems. We can turn it down 20% or we can just shut it off if it's going to rain. What we found, we did necessary upgrades. We got a report that we have an old radio controlled system that was no longer going to be supported. And so just kind of like our systems with our wastewater and water systems, that our SCADA, as we call it, for those systems, that they needed to be upgraded to cellular data and cellular transmission. Our radio system was going to be no longer supported. And so we started looking into what do we do then if we can't use our radio system anymore. So we have multiple different options. We had one option of, let's switch systems. Let's look at this time, take this opportunity to switch systems and look at CalSense or Rainbird Maxicom was the two major systems that we looked at, including a few other small systems that really didn't support with what we wanted to do. But there was a lot of different problems with those systems as far as usability, conversion for us, and very, very expensive for us to transfer those over to a different system. And so we were looking at a CalSense system, for instance, would have been well over $1 million just for parts. Rainbird Maxicom was the same way, but with Toro Sentinel, you have a 48-station clock. Some of the other clocks do not come in 48 stations, so you need multiple clocks to replace one clock. And those clocks run anywhere from like $12,000 to $16,000 currently. So our decision was to upgrade Toro Sentinel from the radio to cellular. So, you know, during this thing, we proactively looked into this system. We need to do this over the next 5 years or the system will no longer be supported. And so we did ask for money in the 2023 budget for this. Here you can see the breakdown of the budget for 2023 through 2026. This year we were approved for $180,000 replacement cost. There's a little bit of a rebate. We're looking at somewhere right around $171,000, I believe, for this year's upgrade that we're trying to do. So, let's see. That being said, what we did find out when we looked into this, though, is one, we can't go out and get 3 bids. So we had to, what do we do, right? If you can't get 3 bids on these, that Toro was sole sourced directly through H.D. Fowler, and they support all of Toro Sentinel supplies through Washington State because of their technical nature, and that's just how they work for that. So even if we tried to buy this somewhere else or go out to bid and say we could get a bid, say in Orion or whatever, they would refer that back to Washington for sales through H.D. Fowler. So we really are tied to just one purchase. Once again, going back to this, well over $1 million, probably closer to $2 million to switch systems. This is a total upgrade. It's going to cost a little over $500,000, so financially it does make sense. But H.D. Fowler provides all of the field service and technical support, testing, and services for Toro Sentinel. We do have 2 of the cellular clocks in use currently, and amazingly enough, I think we're maybe the guinea pigs, like we have been for other things too. And we installed a couple of these clocks, and when we turned them on, it crashed the system, right? Which you think, well, why did it do that? We don't know. So Toro Sentinel came out, tried to troubleshoot it. They couldn't find the problem. They actually flew a technician out here for a couple of days, couldn't find the problem. But one of our technicians, Tony Smith, he actually looked into this issue, troubleshot it for a few days, and found out it was a complication with what they call a version 1 clock. When a version 1 clock was turned on with the rest of them, it crashed systems. So we removed those clocks, and the system then worked. So we can run the radio system and the cellular system simultaneously at the same time currently while we do this switchover process. All right. If it'll move forward for me. So we recommend that council does approve a sole source resolution to purchase these supplies through H.D. Fowler for our Toro Sentinel upgrade.
I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 1125, declaring H.D. Fowler Company the sole source of supply for purchasing cellular Toro Centennial controllers.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Vasquez.
So just so I'm clear, usually a sole source isn't the first place we go, but we've kind of verified in this case that there's not a competitive market for this.
That is correct.
So wasting the time and money to go out and do an RFQ or an RFP doesn't make sense, because the only other folks in this business, their prices are way, way higher than Toro Sentinel.
Right. We had
And
two
we don't
options.
even have the option of multiple distributors to work with to see if they could give us more competitive pricing, because there's only the one.
That is correct. Yes.
And HD Fowler's about as local as it can get.
That's right.
So that's a plus.
So it has been moved and seconded. You know, when I was in this finance meeting, and you know, the question became, you know, of the legality of such a thing. You know, because we're a city, and you know, we oftentimes have to issue an RFP for things, or an RFQ. So. Our city attorney Dave was able to weigh in and just discuss a little bit about the legality of going sole source. Would you care to just share just a little bit?
Yeah, I can just comment that there's a statute in RCW on point for this exact purpose. And much like Councilmember Vasquez just indicated, when supplies are limited, clearly and legitimately limited to a single source of supply, it's this sort of situation where council's authorized to avoid the otherwise public bidding requirements and pass a resolution like this, declaring and authorizing the city to make that purchase.
Awesome. Thank you. So, I was worried about, I think myself, Councilmember Greenstein, and the mayor were kind of concerned about that particular issue. But other than that, it almost seemed as if, you know, we didn't really have a whole lot. We were going to either spend, you know, twice as much or go this route. So thank you for digging into that and making that happen. It has been moved and seconded. Councilmember Vasquez.
Just one more thing to add. I think Jamie was the one that prepared the notes for our consideration. Whoever wrote that report, I appreciate the phrasing of the different options that we have, because there's this, which is a thoughtful replacement over time, year by year, or it was run to fail, like wait until parts of them break down, or kick the can. And like those were the titles of the different options that we have. And so that really put it into perfect perspective for me. So thank you for whoever produced that report.
And it also kept the reading from getting boring.
If I may, managing commercial properties for my family, we've dealt with Rainbird, we've dealt with Toro, we've dealt with a number of other different irrigation companies. And I think the alternative here, price-wise, to change everything else was a great deterrent too, you know, a convincing factor, because it would have been, you know, probably thousands or tens of thousands times more expensive than, you know, this option, so.
And with that, as it has been moved and seconded, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? No, seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Devlin. The next item on our agenda is under the city manager's report, and I will hand this over to Rick Walk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And the first item on the city manager report is we have a proposed amendment to the ILA for the Regional Housing Council. This will be the second proposed amendment, and Ryan Andrews will be up here to provide some background and respond to questions.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. So as Rick mentioned, I'll provide a little information to you tonight on an amendment to an existing interlocal agreement with the Regional Housing Council. And at the end of my presentation, staff is requesting Council pass a motion authorizing the interim city manager to sign the agreement. You, as a reminder, were fully briefed on this at a work session back on January 26th. A little bit of background, approximately 2 years ago, back on January 28th of 2021, the original interlocal agreement was established for the Regional Housing Council. As a reminder, the purpose of the Regional Housing Council is to leverage resources through policies and capital projects related to safe and affordable housing across Thurston County. This original interlocal agreement did dissolve the Health and Human Services Council and the Community Investment Partnership, which were two previous funding sources used for affordable housing projects and addressing homelessness throughout Thurston County. Back on April 30th of 2021, the first amendment to the agreement was executed, clarifying how jurisdictions utilize 1406 funds. About a year ago, back on January 26th of 2022, the Thurston County Board of Commissioners did pass an ordinance authorizing a 0.1% sales tax to establish a home fund. This applies to across Thurston County, including within the city of Lacey, however, not within the city of Olympia, as Olympia had already passed their 0.1% sales tax for that purpose. At the end of this last year, back on December 19th of 2022, an agreement was signed between Thurston County and the City of Olympia to combine those two funds. So those are now combined. One of the things that the agreement did do was set a 90-day clock for the amendment, this second amendment that we're here for tonight, to the Regional Housing Council ILA to be approved by our partner jurisdictions. So, with that, the purpose of the amendment here tonight, number one, is to recognize the consolidation of the Thurston County and Olympia home funds. So again, this is going to be a combined fund. The way the funds will be utilized is through the Regional Housing Council recommending projects that will then be sent to the Thurston County Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners will actually authorize those funds for their use. It will also establish administrative procedures for the combined use of these funds. It will actually establish two separate advisory boards that will provide feedback on applications to the Regional Housing Council, one for affordable housing projects, that's called the Affordable Housing Advisory Board, and one for homeless services projects called the Homeless Services Advisory Boards. The specific advisory boards does include community members and private sector representatives, and the advisory board charter states as such. I just wanted to make mention that since the last time you were briefed on this, the Regional Housing Council has been refining language in this charter suggested to strengthen jurisdictional representation, and Councilmember Cox is also the chair of the Regional Housing Council and would probably be happy to provide a little bit more information on that as well. And then based on council feedback at your last work session, amendments to the draft ILA were made to clarify that representation on these boards is required by all jurisdictions signing the agreement. The purpose continues to allow for the lead agency, in this case Thurston County, to provide funds to partner jurisdictions on specific Regional Housing Council approved tasks. It allows for revisiting the role of lead agency and fiscal agent every 5 years, and it does provide specific language regarding the use of 1406 funds. It does streamline the approval process to allow the Regional Housing Council to make decisions regarding the combined use of these funds, and also establishes a new competitive process where the partners in the Regional Housing Council may request funding for local projects consisting with funding priorities. I did want to make mention before I turn it over to you for any questions is that there was one amendment to the version that was sent in your packet. I believe it was later sent to you by email, which was to add an additional whereas statement to repeal the previous versions of this agreement upon approval of the amendment. And so with that, staff's recommending approval of the second amendment to the ILA. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Can I get a motion?
I would move to approve the interlocal agreement for the Regional Housing Council.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. I know there's going to be discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And let us just jump right in. Anybody want to have some discussion? Councilmember Greenstein.
So if you'll indulge me, I have quite a few things to say about this one. I have several significant concerns. I don't have any questions. I've read it all in detail. My concerns will prevent me from being able to support this. There's no way I could possibly vote for this. I believe that in its current form, it leaves far too many open questions, particularly where it relates to the makeup of these new advisory boards. The Affordable Housing Advisory Board, the agreement stipulates that at least 1/3 of the board's makeup shall come from Olympia. That's a shall, meaning it must happen. All of the other board positions are may, meaning there's nothing more than a suggestion. Nothing holding anyone accountable to make that happen. It's merely a suggestion. Even the list of the mays is primarily made up of groups that could directly benefit from how these monies are spent. We're building an advisory board made up of those people who will benefit from the monies to advise how to spend the money. I see serious concerns with that. On the Homeless Service Advisory Board, there's nothing regarding the makeup of that board either, other than, again, mere suggestions. No guarantees of any representation from this city or any other, except Olympia, of course. I do not see any possible way that this agreement at this time in its current form benefits the people of Lacey who we represent. It's our job to vote on things based on what is best for the citizens of this city, not the region, not the other cities, merely this city. And for that reason, I cannot support this ILA. Thank you.
Anybody care to respond? Member Cox.
Thank you. First, let me ask a clarifying question of Ryan. I think some of Councilmember Greenstein's objections are to language in the charter, and we're not voting on the charter tonight. We are only voting on the interlocal agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which is advised by the charter. It references the charter in the interlocal agreement, so you can't ignore the charter.
You can't ignore it, Councilmember, but it isn't finished yet. It is in
We
draft.
shouldn't be voting on it if it isn't finished.
We're not voting on the charter. I want to say that, you and I have had some conversations. We had a work session as well. I took those conversations to the Regional Housing Council, which just met yesterday, and the council agreed that we need to tighten things up in there to ensure representation from the jurisdictions.
Then what is the hurry to vote on this today before those changes are made?
Well, we have a clock ticking deadline for passage, and there is also time sensitivity to get these advisory committees going, because they are going to be recommending, reviewing applications for funding. There's a cyclical nature that happens here. They're going to be issuing requests for proposals in February, and we need to get this group, both groups stood up, trained and all, so that they can begin this work. So it's very time-sensitive work. I guess the other point I would really like to make is this council committed to working toward regional solutions to homelessness and affordable housing, because it's not something that we can handle ourselves very effectively as a single jurisdiction, nor can the other jurisdictions that are parties to this. I know it's not perfect, and we've made a commitment to improving this as we go, but I think it's a good step forward, and I urge this council to authorize our acting city manager to sign it tonight.
So I just had a couple comments and maybe a question. The 90-day clock that's ticking, so that RFPs can go out on time and so on and so on. Is it possible that we can have an extension on that clock, or is that something that's out of the realm of possibility because of where we are currently?
I don't know if I know the answer to that. Rick,
So part of the whole process that teed this up was the first conversation between the City of Olympia and Thurston County to combine the respective home funds. And so they worked out an interlocal agreement amongst themselves for that transfer and sharing of the two home funds into one. And part of that interlocal agreement was predicated that the amendments to the ILA for the Regional Housing Council had to occur within 90 days. Or else that original agreement to combine the home funds would be null and void. So they put basically a shot clock on the work towards amending the ILA for the Regional Housing Council to set up the and merger of those home funds and the administration by the Regional Housing Council and establishment of the advisory boards. So we wouldn't be able to go back and ask for an extension at this point. I mean, we could, but I don't know if that would be something that would be granted, because that's predicated by a signed
I have a
interlocal
suggestion,
agreement.
because I came here tonight ready to support this, but I have a real issue with inclusion and fairness because of mays or shalls, and maybe we should vote on if that language is all changed to maybe a may instead of shalls, or all shalls. We should all, shall we all? Shouldn't we all have the same representation?
What would be the consequence if we don't meet the timeline? What would specifically be the consequence? Is a consequence that we could overcome by putting more thought and time into the structure of this ILA?
If we take more time and that the 90-day clock runs out, then everything would stop and we'd start from scratch from the very beginning.
Well,
The,
we wouldn't start from
one-
scratch. We would
one-
have at least a baseline to work with.
But again, it's all predicated between the interlocal agreement between Thurston County and the City of Olympia to merge the two home funds into one and set it up for the review and administration by the RHC. Now, we had a work session conversation about this topic, and there was, these same concerns were brought up, and
But they haven't been addressed. I mean, they've been discussed, but they've not been addressed or changed.
there was some,
hold on,
there was
hold
some amendment to the previous ILA to attempt to address the concerns, and in the ILA before you, the language added was the RHC shall ensure that the advisory board is composed of community members, including private sector stakeholders representing the jurisdictions, and the jurisdictions defined as the partners. And so now that that's given direction to the RHC, and now they have to create that charter and what that makeup is. And the conversation at the Regional Housing Council last night was to strengthen that language in the charter to ensure that there's representation from each of the jurisdictions, including Tumwater, South County, Yelm, and the City of Lacey. And that conversation, I was given direction to the staff of the tech team to bring back language that reflects that.
So if I can finish my point, because
Go ahead.
I was in the middle of it. Can't we vote on this pending the edited language of shalls or mays or shalls? I mean, I wouldn't want it to be Lacey shall be 1/3 and everybody else a little bit less or maybe or whatever. It's all are the same for me. It's we're all in this together. We're all great partners. We could vote on this, and if they change that charter language, then it's good. Is that possible?
Well, there is shall language in the ILA that directs that there's representation amongst all the jurisdictions. The charter is going to define that with the work by the Regional Housing Council based on their direction to the staff. And again, going back, I believe, just as more context too, as this is going around to the various jurisdictions for approval, I think on the schedule, the county commissioners already approved this.
And the same with the Tumwater City Council.
City of Tumwater. So the last two actions are by the City of Lacey, and I think the City of Olympia is scheduled for next week.
And Tumwater might be comfortable with may instead of shall under their city, but.
Well, just to answer your direct question, this council can't accept this
Conditionally.
agreement contingent on a future action. This council has to take action on this tonight, either to support it or not.
Councilmember Vasquez.
So I'm a little frustrated by this discussion. I think the concerns that were expressed during one of our previous meetings were that there wasn't stiff enough language to ensure that we had representation from private sector and folks who wouldn't directly benefit from moving the funding around through the RHC. And what I see is that they incorporated that feedback with changes to the language to ensure that private sector stakeholders from the jurisdictions are included on the advisory boards. This agreement has been in the works for a long time, and a lot of staff have worked really hard to make sure that this is a fair partnership, described as well as we can without knowing all the details. I don't want Lacey to drag its feet in getting into fixing the problem facing all of our cities. I want us to make sure that we get this done within the 90 days so we don't pass up funding, so that we can start solving the problem that we all see in our communities, that we hear about from residents all the time. I don't want residents to see us not doing anything or wasting time.
So, can I get you just in just a second? So when it comes to the charter and the members of the charter and how those advisory boards are built, will this come before us again once those advisory boards are built and completed, or
No,
is it?
the advisory boards have already been affirmed by the Regional Housing Council. The next step with the advisory boards is that they go to the Board of County Commissioners to be formally appointed. So at the meeting last night, the RHC made formal recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for the members of those advisory boards.
So the members of the advisory boards have already been chosen.
Correct.
And is it fair for us to say who they are, or how that advisory board is currently being built or built out? Or, I mean, we have the chair here with us, and so I'm just kind of trying to put out a fire.
The advisory board, there was an application process for interested parties. Those applications went through a initial staff review that provided basically a scoring system and recommendation up to the chair and vice chair of the Regional Housing Council. The chair and vice chair of the Regional Housing Council then interviewed those candidates and made a recommendation to the Regional Housing Council, who then took action on that recommendation last night to forward the recommendation up to the county commissioners. Each board has the boards have a minimum of 8 members and a maximum of 14. I don't believe all the seats were filled. I'm going to look to Councilmember Cox for that information. I don't believe every seat was filled, but enough seats were filled to begin that process of looking at this next round of funding that would actually occur this spring.
To Rick's point, I have the list of the people who went forward. The affordable housing group, there are 13 of 14 possible positions filled. There is one Lacey rep. There is at least one Lacey UGA rep. There is a representative from the home builders, affordable group. On the homeless services group, there are 2 Lacey residents, 2 unincorporated Thurston County resident, and one of those for sure lives in the Lacey area. And let's see, one also is employed by the North Thurston School District and the administration there. So they were going to be notified, I think, today, so I kind of hate to use names until we're sure people are notified. And it won't be official until it goes to the county commission on February 28th.
And just to clarify, the home builders group is the Olympia Master Builders.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good.
Councilmember Greenstein.
Yeah, so I have a few additional comments here. For one, the fact that they've already made the recommendation to the county is actually even more troublesome, considering we've not even acted on this yet, and they're already recommending who's going to be on these committees. And I get that we're not acting on the charter, but the document that we are voting on references the charter that we were just made aware isn't complete and is going to be, they're going to do more work on that. How can we possibly take to a vote something that isn't complete? This looks to me a lot like something we saw out of Congress, where they said, we need to pass this so that we can read it and know what it means. That's what we're doing. We're trying to pass something that is incomplete and that we don't know what it does or says yet. This is ludicrous that we should even be considering this at this point. The 90-day clock is nonsensical. That is imposed by the county and the city of Olympia. Since when do we take direction from either of them? We are, as jurisdiction, we have a board here, a council that takes action on what's best for the residents of Lacey. I don't care that their 90-day clock is up. It's irrelevant to me, and it's irrelevant to the people of Lacey. So it should be ignored.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
One last thing.
Councilmember Stedman.
I believe words matter. The wording in this ILA, there's nothing wrong with it, and that's what we're voting on tonight. But the wording in the
Charter.
Yeah, the charter. Thank you. I got sidetracked there. That's what I have issue with. I'll vote on it tonight. If it winds up passing, then I'll be a proponent if that language is not changed, to be inclusive and fair to all
It's
jurisdictions.
too late after your vote to then be an opponent to something, Mike. You're voting
Not
on
when
it
there's
today.
not when they're
You
still
need to stand up
not
and
when
make
they're
a vote.
not when they're working on the charter. So you can change something that you're still working on.
You can't, once you voted on it. Once you voted on it,
We're not
it's done.
voting on the charter. We're voting on the
Doesn't matter.
interlocal
Read-
agreement.
read the
Okay,
ILA.
so for the past 2, 3, 4 years, we have come into these chambers and we have discussed what we need to do about homelessness. We've all come to the conclusion that we're too weak to do it by ourselves, and that we need a regional approach, that we need partnership in order to fix this problem. Yesterday, I was out at the Nisqually, their main building where they have their council meetings, and I get asked on a regular basis, what are you doing about homelessness? And when we were out there and they showed us their plan for an opioid clinic over here on Pacific, in conjunction with our efforts, with the Days Inn and Olympia's efforts with their 2820 building, Franz Anderson project, our approach to curing what we all see and get emails about is the overarching bigger thing and theme that we, or at least I, am hoping to attack here tonight, if at all possible. It appears that we have, a document that could get us a step closer to that goal, even though we see some language in there that we're honestly, not all of us are super fond of. It would be to move forward with this would take some faith on our part as a council. It would put us in a situation where we have to believe that our jurisdictional partners also have the best interest of us, our residents. We all get the emails. We all get the conversations wherever we go. If you know a council member and you know who that person is, and I would probably say 10 to 15% of the residents actually, but we get those conversations everywhere we go. What are you doing about it? What's happening with it? What's going on? Why do I see it? When am I not going to see it? And I have this conversation with people, I would say at least twice a week, at a minimum, if not more. And I tell them about our mobile outreach team, our different teams that we have within the city, and the different things that we're doing, and the different things that we've tried to stand up or have been standing up, and so on, to kind of ease their mind and tell them about future things that are planned and happening. This being one of them. This idea was the mayor's idea, at least in part, to have the RHC be the overarching body to oversee our regional issue and have an executive director and have authority. And it's happened fairly fast, and none of it's been perfect. But we still have a decision to make here tonight. And I'm hoping that we at least get that decision done so that we can move on. Councilmember Greenstein.
I just have a couple more final comments here. One, and take this how you will, and some may not like it, but that's fine. One of the comments that you just made, Deputy Mayor, about our neighboring jurisdictions wanting to do its best, that's not always been the case for Lacey. As you may recall, several incidents dealing particularly with this issue of homelessness, where our neighboring jurisdictions did not act as partners, and in fact, treated Lacey pretty poorly in the way they've handled some of their homeless situations, including cleaning out a camp and moving them into Lacey without any conversation with Lacey first, just moving them out of their jurisdiction and into ours. So it's very difficult for me to do this based on faith that our neighboring jurisdictions are going to act appropriately, because they've not proven that to be the case. So I'll start there. Second thing, actually, I'll leave it at that.
And I remember that situation. I think we all do. And I remember us reaching out and finding out that they had hired a third-party organization to deal with the issue. And Rick reached out to the third-party organization to find out, why did you...
Lacey dealt with it. Lacey Police and Lacey had to take care of all the services because they provided none. The one last comment, and then I'll stop and we can take a vote on this ridiculous ILA. But the last comment I would make is that this is extremely frustrating, obviously. Some of the comments I heard from some other council members about the public wants to see that we're doing something. And I agree, they do. And I get those calls. I would say, at least a half a dozen calls or emails a week regarding the homeless situation. But I got to tell you, at least 90% of the calls I get people believe it's in Lacey, and it's not.
Yep.
When they confirmed where the actual location was, it was actually in our neighboring jurisdictions, not in the city of Lacey. So the idea that we need people to see that we're doing something, I think we are doing something. I think the mobile outreach teams are our reaction. We're doing an amazingly good job, I believe, in the city of Lacey. Thank you to several of our departments, our police, public works, economic development, and community development. We're doing really good work in the city of Lacey, and I think far better, and you can certainly tell from the cleanliness of our intersections, far better work than our neighboring jurisdictions are doing. I mean, just go to Slater-Kinney. Have you driven by Slater-Kinney lately? It looks like someone dumped the dump out on the Olympia side of Slater-Kinney. They're not willing to do what needs to be done that we have been doing. So the idea that this is going to work just doesn't make sense. We're throwing money at something in the wrong direction. What we're doing is working. How about they take on some more of what we're doing instead of us trying to be more like them?
Councilmember Cox.
Well, try to hold my tongue here, but I wanted to clarify when I said that the charter is still being tweaked, and I think Rick and Ryan can back me up on this, that the full tweakage request yesterday that was made of the Regional Housing Council was that our technical team, of which Rick and Ryan are both parts, were to come back with language that puts the shall into jurisdictional representation on there. There aren't other major tweaks at all. I mean, that was, I took your concerns to the Regional Housing Council. They heard it, they agreed with it, and
Let's vote on it after they've done it.
each of the cities made a commitment to, as openings come up on these advisory boards, to recruiting members from their communities to serve on it. I mean, one of the things with how quickly we've had to move with these deadlines is that, you can't force people to volunteer. You can't force people from Lacey to say, yeah, I'm going to go work on this. It's who shows up. But we agreed to make a concerted effort from here on to really work to make sure that Lacey and the other cities are adequately represented. I also wanted to just quickly say the reason for the larger the percentage on the Homeless Services Committee is that Olympia subsumed its home fund into the county home fund. They had their own advisory committee for their home fund, and so that is being subsumed. So between Olympia's commitment of funds to be merged into the county home fund and their committee being subsumed, and the fact that 99% of all the social services agencies are in Olympia, that was how that came to be in there. It's not because Olympia wants to have it all its way.
Okay.
So again, Rick or
Okay.
Ryan, do you want to add anything to that? Was that a fair summation of what happened yesterday?
It is, and that was the conversation at the Regional Housing Council and the directive given to the staff. And the ILA itself, in reference to the charter, directs the RHC to shall approve a charter that guides the membership. And so that process is being happened based off that draft language in the ILA.
Councilmember Stedman.
The OMB supports this.
Nobody said that.
No.
Someone brought the OMB in.
One of the applicants that's being recommended to the Board of County Commissioners to be on the advisory board is from the OMB.
Well, I'll just say, I agree, we are a great example. But we've all said previously that this is a regional issue and that the best way to a solution or a fix is us acting together regionally. We're not voting on the charter tonight, we're voting on the ILA. Those words matter, and if those words aren't changed, I'm going to become the biggest proponent of this, because, yeah, sometimes you got to take a leap of faith. The cart's in front of the horse a little bit here, but there is trust. When you have relationships and you're trying to manage something as difficult as homelessness, yeah, you know, it's not in concrete. It's being formed right now, that charter, and I want those words out of it. That's my stance.
So, just real quick, what is the annual dollar figure that we're talking about in terms of our contribution? If I remember right, it was 1.4, or is 1/10 of 1%, which equates to.
You're talking about related to the home fund collections?
Mm-hmm.
It's the Thurston County's collection of the dollars, and roughly about 1.4 would come from City of Lacey. Is it 1.4?
I think total it's about $4 million. It's sales tax money, so sales tax money is obviously going to fluctuate based on how much sales tax revenue is collected throughout the community.
Yeah, so about a third of that would come from Lacey area sales, but again, it's collected by the county. It's not collected by the city. It's not necessarily city dollars because the county passed the home fund tax.
So when we look at this, what we're looking at is, do we contribute 1.4 a year to an ILA, and to see where those for the county to have direction, for all of us to go to the RHC with shovel ready projects, and fund these projects. See how that.
The county has already passed the home fund, so regardless of what happens with this ILA, they would still collect those funds and be able to establish a home fund process and an advisory board. They're looking at putting it at the RHC to manage that home funds and make recommendations. Just as similar as Olympia has their own home fund tax, and they're looking to merge it and have the RHC make the recommendations on how those dollars are spent at the regional level. So it won't be Olympia making any, they're moving their dollars over, and the county is shifting their authority to the recommendation of the RHC. So we're not putting any dollars in per se, other than it's a countywide sales tax that is collected not only, in Tumwater, but also in Lacey by the county.
Okay, well, my friends, it has been moved and seconded. Is there anybody else who has anything else that they would like to say about this subject before we vote on it? Councilmember Vasquez.
Yeah, I think this agreement establishes a way for us to get together to make decisions about pooled funding to solve a problem facing all of the jurisdictions in our community. I think we are fairly represented in the agreement from my perspective. This reduces the risk of funding losses due to bureaucratic inefficiency by giving some authority to the Regional Housing Council to make decisions and get things done. I think it's not perfect, but it is a huge step in the right direction.
Councilmember Kunkel.
What happens to us if they make a decision that the city of Lacey is at odds with? Do we have any recourse? Can we change that direction, or are we subject to what they decide?
So there's a couple of pieces there. One is each partner jurisdiction has a representative on the RHC to provide comments and feedbacks and
No,
report back.
I get that part, but at the end of the day, the RHC is going to make a decision. Whether we agree with it or not, they're going to make a final decision.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And it's out of our hands.
Correct.
So whatever decision they make that may have an impact on Lacey, it's out of our hands.
Correct. But I want to add on to clarify on the home fund dollars. Those are dollars that are collected at the county level and at Olympia. There is in the ILA reference to our $1406, which is about $110,000 a year. And that was something that the city, all the partners agreed to pool at that level. And I just want to make sure the council is aware too that in this ILA amendment that there's language to change that those $1406, the RHC will be able to make recommendations on how to direct those. Previously, that changes from the previous language where RHC can make recommendation, but it would need to go back for the local council approval before the county commissioners can act on it. But that is one change that's been proposed in this as well, outside the advisory board process. And And I just want to make sure the council's aware of that, because reason why that's being proposed is because the efficiency and timing of being able to use those funds for regional projects. I think it's something that it does create a body of regional housing council we've all agreed to work with to create that regional decisions and regional efforts consistent with not only funding priorities, but also housing plans, and to address some of the housing needs in the community.
Just for clarity, a quick question on what you just said, Rick. The $1,406, Lacey is pledging their $1,406 to this, as are the other jurisdictions. In the original agreement, the RHC would make a recommendation. It would come back before this council. We've been removed from that. So RHC now not only controls the home fund money and all of that, but the 1406 money is now completely under the jurisdiction of the RHC. It doesn't come back to this council for any decision.
Correct. And also to further clarify is that it also adds language that the city of Lacey, Tumwater, Yelm, or Olympia could submit a proposal to request those dollars for funding a local project. So they're still accessible to the local jurisdictions, but they're, but you're right. The way the proposed language is to move that step and process and have the REC be the recommendation and up to the county commissioners.
Passing along more of our authority.
Council Member Stedman.
At the end of every agenda item on our agenda, there, you know, when that item comes up, there's advantages and disadvantages. And this one says, approving the amendment to this interlocal agreement establishes administrative procedures to guide the Regional Housing Council on use of the combined Thurston County and Olympia home funds. Disadvantages, none. Again, I'm going to vote on this ILA. I'm not going to be voting on this charter.
But we're not voting on what you just read either. That's nothing more than statement from staff that put this.
Councilmember Cox, how many
report
members
together.
are on the RHC?
All the information we got was from staff.
Some of it's an actual ILA, if you read the document. That is.
I did read the document.
Okay, here we go. Councilmember Cox, how many members are on the RHC board with you?
We have one representative from Olympia, one from Tumwater, one from Thurston County, one from Yelm, and one from Lacey.
5 members
5 voting members,
who get together once a month.
twice a month generally.
Twice a month.
Yeah. So each jurisdiction has 1 vote.
Each jurisdiction having 1 vote.
And just to add on a little bit, because of the conversation about concerns, what if this was adopted going forward, is the agreement in ILA does have a clause in there that if something occurs that does not, one of the jurisdictions does not like, there's an opportunity to terminate in Section 13 and step out of the agreement in the future. So there's that provision there as typical in any type of ILA that provides a safeguard on these agreements. That if it's not working out how everybody envisioned, there's ability to break ranks, if you will.
Does anybody have any more comments that they want to bring to this matter before we take our final vote? Councilmember Cox.
Just want to say that you know, this has been hard for everybody, and I understand the concerns that have been raised today. But, and, you know, I promise that we are working to address them as well as we can. But I have to say that nursing old grudges, and I mean, this council has a good reason to have hurt feelings from things that happened in the past. But nursing old grudges does not progress make. It impedes progress. And so tonight, I really urge a positive vote to support having our acting city manager sign this interlocal agreement.
So, you know, as we move forward in, you know, relationships are not always perfect. We all know that. If everybody in this room is an adult, and we've all had 1 or 2 relationships in our time. And for those of us who've been married for any length of time, we also understand that sometimes things don't go as they do in some fairy tale life that we were told about or whatever. And so, yes, we have had back and forth with some of the other jurisdictions. We have not always had perfect relations with them. And honestly, we have been let down a couple times. And I don't know if those jurisdictions would say that we've let them down a time or two. But I do know that it looks like we have a decision to make tonight. And in making that decision, it looks like, well, I'll not try to sway your decision, but I do need to take a vote.
Why don't we just call for the vote?
So for the Regional Housing Council Interlocal Agreement Amendment Number 2, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
That motion passes. We shall see.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item, man, I almost forgot where we were at. We're still under City Manager's report.
Yes. So our next item under the city manager's report is the corporate sponsor and names rights policy. And Parks Director Jen Burbridge and Assistant City Manager Shannon Kelly Fong will be presenting and providing background on this proposal.
Thanks, Rick. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of the council. Before you tonight are some proposed updates to the Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation, Corporate Sponsorship and Naming Rights Policy, and City Council Policy 5.13. Recommendation tonight is to approve the updated policies at a future City Council meeting as recommended by the Parks, Culture and Recreation Board and the Commission on Equity. I know it's a large packet. I'm going to give a 10-minute-ish overview, but I'm going to pause halfway through for questions once we get through the policy part before we get to the attachments. So if you'll bear with me. But first, I just want to thank both the Parks, Culture, and Recreation Board and the Commission on Equity for their work on this. There were 2 meetings, as I'll point out. I just think that the council should be proud of the boards, the advisory boards that they have. A great group of people with some really great insights. I also want to thank Assistant City Manager Shannon Kelly Fong, who was instrumental in helping with these policy updates and recommendations. So a little bit of background to let you know why the changes are recommended. The Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation Department relies on partnerships, grants, donations, and sponsorships to offset the cost of providing important services that are enjoyable to the community, such as programs, events, and facilities. And so Lacey Parks is uniquely positioned to partner with a person, and this is our first update in the policy, thanks to our city attorney for helping us clarify some language. A person is described as an individual, corporation, limited liability company, or any other legal commercial entity. And so that's changed throughout, you'll see. That provides money, goods, or services to help bring programs and events to Lacey, and therefore that's why Lacey Parks has a policy for sponsorship and naming rights. And the person conversation leads to the next change that is suggested, and that is to drop the word corporate from the sponsorship and naming rights policy because of what I just stated. The person could be an individual that wants to sponsor. So it just kind of opens up some more options. This program, sponsorship program, supports Lacey Parks in their efforts to develop, maintain, improve, and sustain its park assets and programs, which in turn benefits our public and our community. These types of partnerships do definitely generate revenue. They help with cost savings, but they also increase the awareness of parks, culture, and recreation programs, and they complement the visitor experience. So I'll give you just a quick little example is, say it's a Children's Day event, instead of having one main attraction like an inflatable, we might be able to afford to have 2 for the kids due to a sponsorship that comes in. In 2022, and our sponsorship program has been quite impactful thanks to the efforts of our staff working with our local businesses. In 2022, we had just under $69,000 in sponsorships for the year. And as you know, inflation is happening, so cost of services is definitely going up, so it really does help. Due to some public concerns about our sponsorship program, the two boards held two joint meetings, as I mentioned before. The first was on November 14th of 2022, and staff was able to get some insights from the boards. And there were three main pieces of feedback. And the first one was creating a more comprehensive and standardized evaluation process for the city staff to use when reviewing potential sponsors. The second one was adding language to the policy and other sponsorship-related materials, such as the sponsorship agreement, that are and that language to be added would be in alignment with the city's draft equity goals and commitment to equity. And the third piece of feedback was to separate the environmental stewardship and the equity criteria into two separate line items. So based on this feedback, the city drafted updates to the policy and brought the edits back to the advisory boards just here not too long ago, January 25th, 2023, for further review and discussion. And the Parks Board and Commission on Equity did approve the draft changes. They did have just some, they had great conversation and a few changes, but did recommend to City Council what you see in the packet for final approval. And those recommended updates were pretty much answer to those ideas that I stated earlier of, number one, adding, a more robust, standardized process when we review sponsorship potentials. So they're suggesting the addition of a sponsorship questionnaire, which is attachment 3, to be completed prior to city staff pursuing a sponsorship or meeting with a potential sponsor. In addition, the city has drafted a sponsorship matrix, which is attachment 4, to enhance review and decision-making process, and that is something that would be optional for city staff to use, but just have a tool in our toolbox for reviewing sponsorships. And then the second update would further incorporate the city's equity commitment in the policy as well as in the other documents like the sponsorship questionnaire, the matrix that I mentioned, and then also adding some wording into our sponsorship agreement that we use when we secure a sponsorship. And then the third thing is really separating out the environmental stewardship and equity criterias. We have provided as attachment 1 a clean copy. As you'll see in the marked up copy, there's quite a bit of changes and trying to streamline the language and add a numbering system so it's easier to read the policy. But I will highlight that there were 3 sections that were significantly changed, or most significantly changed, section 7, 9, and 12. So section 7 is the eligibility criteria. What do we look at when we're reviewing whether a sponsor should come in or not? And in section C, it states the director may use but is not limited to the following criteria when evaluating sponsorships. In all cases, the director or designee will have the prerogative to accept or reject the proposal. And so what we did is really separated the criteria out, made it easier to read, and we, in section C, Roman numeral 1, the compatibility of the person's background, products, customers, and promotional goals with City of Lacey mission, number 1, Lacey Parks mission, number 2, City of Lacey's equity values and mission, that's number 3, and then environmental stewardship, that's number 4. And then in section D of 7, at its discretion, Lacey Parks may reject a sponsorship offer, and then the circumstances under which this may occur, we had added some wording in Roman numerals 2, 3, and 4. If that potential sponsor seeks to impose conditions that are inconsistent with the city's and the park's mission, values, and policies, so it's kind of the opposite of what I just said. Or the potential sponsor seeks to impose conditions inconsistent with the city's equity values, or the potential sponsor seeks to impose conditions inconsistent with the city's environmental stewardship values. And then in moving on to section 9, the advertising not allowed, we did do a slight change to E, which is tobacco and smoking. We added vaping to that. And then the most significant change to number 9 is we added the letters R, S, T, and U. So R is if something is adverse to the city's mission and values. S is adverse to the city equity values. T is adverse to parks, culture, and recreation. And U is if there's any discrimination. And then in section 12, which is actual procedure. Oh, yes, did you have a question?
I did. So anyone who has a desire to be a corporate sponsor, as long as they follow our guidelines, they are still eligible.
Yes.
Okay, so there isn't anybody that we're singling out, or any group or entity that we could be potentially singling out, as long as they comply to our standards. While
Right.
they're doing the corporate sponsorship, then there should be no issue, correct?
There shouldn't be. So what we're suggesting is a questionnaire, and that's in one of the attachments that'll get to help us do a little bit of a more comprehensive review when there is a potential sponsor. But you're right, everybody would be held to the same process and the same standard. And so then for the procedure portion, the persons that we were just talking about would submit a sponsorship questionnaire, and we'll look at that next. And then the director, so that's a piece that would be required. And then the matrix, like we talked about, is just a tool, so that one's optional. And then if the director or designee approves the proposal in principle, staff would draft a sponsorship agreement. So that's the basic procedure. And then I will remind, here at the very bottom of the policy, it says full park or facility naming rights opportunities will be identified and submitted to the Parks Board for approval to seek a naming rights sponsor. And then once a full park or facility naming rights, that sponsor is approved by the Parks Board, it would come to the City Council for final approval. So that is the one category. So I'll give you an example. If we opened up a field at the RAC for sponsorship, that could be something that could be approved by the director or designee. But if we're talking about the entire regional athletic complex naming rights, that would come to the council through the Park Board. So that's the policy changes, and I was just going to pause for questions. So there you go.
I just had a quick one on what you
Yeah.
just said, though.
Yes.
So is that true on the naming of a building as well? That would come before council? Like, for instance, when we rename the senior center, Virgil Clarkson, that would still come before council?
Yeah, but we'll say like a room in the senior center. That could be something that wouldn't need to come to council.
Got it.
Deputy Mayor.
Other questions?
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Cox.
Yeah, Jen, first I'd like to say thank you. I mean, there's been an enormous amount of work done here to have a great policy, and I really appreciate that. And I'm going to confine my comments to the questionnaire. I'd like to recommend that we kind of look at questions number 1 and 2 on there. Question number 1, do your values align with the City of Lacey mission? Yes, no. If no, please describe why and how. And I'd like to see that question say, how do your values align with the City of Lacey vision? Because you're going to get more information that way.
Yeah, because if they say yes, they just say yes.
I agree. Explain it either way, yes.
Right, explain either way. And then the same thing with question 2, do your values align with the Lacey Parks and Cultural Recreation vision? There's a simple yes, an explanation of no. I'd like to say, how do your values align with that? And I think you're going to get a whole lot more information there that could be valuable.
I think that's great feedback. Thank you.
Sure.
So are we?
And I'll run through the questionnaire. Oh, go ahead.
Are we sending them the values packet, and then that's how they know if they line up with us, or?
Yeah, so we're getting into the questionnaire right now, and then I wanted to make sure and pause after the policy updates just to see if there were any questions. And so yeah, attachment 3 is the sponsorship questionnaire, and this would be required. I also want to say this would be filled out by the potential sponsor if they came to us and asked, but it would be filled out by staff if there was somebody we were thinking about approaching. We would go through this as a first, step, and then after we met with them, we would put it out to them. And then I also want to say that this isn't the only thing that would be done. I mean, staff is going to do their own research and have their own ideas about it as well, but this is just another additional tool.
Jen, when you say that if we're thinking about inviting someone to sponsor an event, staff would do the work. You're talking about the policy and procedure, right? Not the questionnaire?
Staff would go through the questionnaire on their own, I think, before approaching someone, just to think through and maybe do a little research on some of the background of that company. Give it some consideration. It's just a tool that we can use. Because those are the two different ways that we end up entering into a sponsorship agreement is, we could be approached by a business who's interested or a person, or staff could say, hey, here's a company or person that would be a great fit for this particular event or program.
Councilmember Greenstein.
Yeah, just thank you for all the work on this, and I really like the questionnaire idea. I think that's a really good step to have them complete the questionnaire. Just one question, just for clarity. So on 1I, which is page 74 in the packet or page 4 on the document, I don't know which way is easier for you to find it, but I'm just trying to understand what it says exactly. So the compatibility of the person's background, products, customers, and promotional goals. What do we mean by the compatibility of the person's background? What does that mean?
Another word could be alignment. So you could use alignment with the city's mission, the Lacey Parks mission.
Yeah, but I guess the word that I'm trying to understand is background more than anything else. I'm just the compatibility of the person's background. I'm just not trying to understand what that means.
Yeah, if there was an issue that in the company's background that might be something that could be too controversial, we'll say that maybe there's a company that has dumped oil into the environment in the past, and they're approaching the city for a sponsorship. That's just as an example. Is that something that would be compatible with the environmental stewardship that the city upholds?
That helps me understand it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. So I will go through the questionnaire and, just interrupt if you have questions. But it does say, you've all read it, but it says to be considered for a sponsorship, please answer the following questions. The director or designee will use this information when evaluating the proposal. In all cases, the director or designee will have discretion to accept or reject the proposal pursuant to the City of Lacey Parks sponsorship and naming rights policy. We have the definition of the person again. And then we just make sure that the use of you in the sponsorship questionnaire, that everyone can understand that that's referring to whatever type of person, whether that's the individual corporation, LLC, or other legal or commercial entity. We also do in the questionnaire point out that franchises, subsidiaries, or any other subdivision of a corporation will need to answer the following questions, with the you referring to the local company as well as the overall corporation. So number 1 refers to the City of Lacey mission and the values aligning. Number 2 refers to Lacey Parks vision, which is stated. And then I think there were great suggestions on ways to word that question. And then the next theme is the City of Lacey equity values. There is an abbreviated draft of the city's equity values in the questionnaire. And then the question is, do you support all aspects of these values and this statement, yes or no? Wondering if you have the same feedback as the prior 2 questions of how do your values align? Yes.
Instead of saying, do you agree with our values, what if you had a corporate sponsor that made a comment like, we have no conflict with the values? Is that agreeable enough, or do we have to align 100% with the values?
So we're going to take the feedback from the company through this questionnaire, and staff is also going to do their own research and provide their own input. And that's what they can use that matrix for, which is the next attachment to kind of, consolidate the thoughts around the questionnaire, and then also some of the research that the staff does on their own.
Very similar to what we've done with the LTAC application earlier this year, to kind of drill down and figure out a little bit more who we're actually dealing with before we get into a relationship or issue out dollars or whatever.
And then question 4, is in the same theme of the City of Lacey equity values, so it's listed under that same section. And it says the City of Lacey is committed to delivering exceptional public services, policies, and programs that integrate equity and social justice as core principles as we continue to grow as a vibrant and thriving community. Tell us about any equity, including race and social justice initiatives or work that you've been involved in. So that's an open-ended question. And then under the environmental stewardship section, question number 5 says, the City of Lacey is committed to environmental stewardship, sustainability, and conservation. Tell us about any environmental stewardship, sustainability, or conservation initiatives or work that you have been involved with. Similar to the prior question. Then there's a community support section. So question 6 says, is there any reason community members would be opposed to sponsoring city programs? Yes or no? If yes, please describe the circumstances. And then there is an other section. Is there anything else you would like the City of Lacey to know? And that's an open-ended question. Other questions on the questionnaire? And then the matrix is attachment 4, like I said, and that's just the different sections that I named in the questionnaire align with that table so that staff can use this as a tool for evaluation. And then attachment 5 is the Council Policy 5.13, and so what we did here, the biggest change is that we identified the person referring to the individual corporation, et cetera, like I stated earlier. We did add under 6A, it states facilities shall not ordinarily be named for living persons except for under the following conditions, and we added a number 3 that says they fall under the sponsorship and naming rights policy. So this is something that just made sense because we had already in the last round of updates for this particular policy, we had added number 8, which is naming rights may also be granted to a person for a mutually agreed upon fee pursuant to the policies and procedures of the sponsorship and naming rights policy. So it just made sense to put it into the other section as well. So any questions on the 5.13 policy? And last but not least, attachment 6 is the sponsorship agreement that we use. So we just made a generic one, called it company. So it's not a particular company, but just so you can kind of see what our contracts look like. And what we did is we added on the last page the non-discrimination section, which is actually pretty standard for all of our city contracts and RFPs, et cetera.
Just had a quick question on that non-discrimination statement. So that's template language that we have in other places?
Mm-hmm.
It just reads kind of weird.
Oh.
Because it says, it's the policy of the city to promote non-discrimination. I think a more normal, can't talk today either. A more normal way of saying that would be that it is our position that we combat or prevent discrimination, instead of saying we promote non-discrimination. I don't know what that is. So
Take
just
it
feedback,
from the
if it's
HR
in other
manager.
places, something,
Yeah.
food for thought.
Yeah, we're wanting to make the language standard across all of the city documents, and we could look to our attorney for that as well, for help with that. So,
That's another good comment.
comment? Yeah.
HR manager.
Nice catch. So the question, unless there's any other questions about this, the question would be, would you want this to come to a future council meeting for approval with the suggested amendments? Or is this something you'd like to dive deeper into with a work session?
Everybody want to sound off individually? Starting down there?
If we wanted to take action on this tonight, would we be permitted to do so? Or is this something we'd have to provide notice on? Because we could take action on the proposal with the amendments as discussed, right?
Councilmember Kunkel?
I would say give it a minute for a final draft and then have the council approve it.
Councilmember Cox?
Yeah, I think final draft and council approval is the way to go.
Councilmember Stedman?
I'm ready to vote on it tonight. Let's, with the amendments.
Councilmember Greenstein?
I see no reason for another work session, I think. Just the corrections, and then we can vote on it. I think that's fine. Or tonight, it doesn't matter.
Would you be bringing it to us on another work session, or would you just bring it, final draft to another council meeting and ask for the action?
Council meeting.
Yep, yeah, so you could either vote on it tonight with the discussed amendments with a motion, or you can refer this to the next council meeting for action.
Hey, Rick,
is there
with a
anybody-
final
I would
draft.
move to approve the updated corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy and city council policy 5.13 for tonight's meeting by the Parks Cultural and Recreational Board and the Commission on Equity.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
For clarification on the motion,
I was just headed that way.
As amended.
as amended to include the comments by, okay.
I left that part out.
And perhaps staff could confirm with council during discussion the nature, to confirm we're on the same page with those amendments. They seem pretty brief to me.
So Dave, quick question on that, since the motion is to proceed with the adoption of 513 specifically. Were there any identified amendments to that? My recollection was the amendments were to the policy as well as to the questionnaire.
The language to the non-discrimination language of 513.
If there's,
I might call on the clerk to see what she heard. Maybe I listened to, and maybe assumed the motion included approval of the updated corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy and policy 5.13, everything that the council has discussed this evening with the amendments suggested by council.
I read it right off the recommendation.
So with that, it would be all that we've discussed.
Thank you.
so it has been moved and seconded with all that we have discussed. Councilmember Kunkel, then Councilmember Cox.
I appreciate what Councilmember Stedman is doing. However, I think the better option is to allow the staff to make the corrections and then vote on it in the next council meeting. So I will decline.
Councilmember Cox.
I have exactly the same feelings as my seatmate here, and I would like to offer a friendly motion that changes Councilmember Stedman's motion from voting to approve it tonight to voting to approve it at our next formal council meeting. Will he accept?
I would just withdraw my motion.
Okay. Well, let's just stop right there.
Let's look to the attorney for how we're supposed to go now.
There's been a motion and a second. There's discussion, so there needs to be a vote.
There needs to be a vote.
And if it doesn't pass, then it fails, and that's fine. And then, but it's been seconded, so I think technically it should.
We still have to vote. So
Voting on the original motion, correct?
Correct.
Not what he he didn't amend it, he actually withdrew it, so never mind.
So
We vote even though he withdrew it?
you can't withdraw it.
Can't withdraw
It
a
has to
second
be
Already be
motion?
seconded.
Okay.
So all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That motion fails. We will go.
And staff has good direction on the amendments to make. We'll provide a clean copy for council with a red line and highlighting the precise changes that council suggested tonight, and that'll come at a future council meeting for a quick
Is any
discussion.
motion necessary for that?
Not right now, no. We'll
Okay.
just direction.
Okay, because
So
I
we're
thought
good.
there was a request for a motion on that, okay.
They just want to know if we can bring it back to another meeting.
Thank you. I promise to keep it short when I bring it back.
Thank you so much, Jen. I hope we didn't give you any heartburn tonight.
Thank you. Oh, no, that's good. We'll make those changes. Thank you.
Okay, so is that all that we have on that agenda item? Is there nothing further? Good. Okay, up next, we have standing general committees, and the mayor normally delivers on the Finance and Economic Development Committee. I was at that meeting too, so I will stand in for what he was to deliver. Most of it you've already heard with the Toro Sentinel sole source purchase. So that that motion passed, and that was a very big part of that meeting. That meeting was on Tuesday, January 24th, 8:30 a.m. Myself was there, the mayor was there, and Councilmember Greenstein were all three in attendance. One of the things that we talked about, the other agenda item was our food truck court, which is just east of here, a mile, and the food truck court, the continued growth that we're trying to get out of the food court truck, that is also the site of our future Lacey Museum, and so the food truck, the court won't be there permanently. However, we have done significant upgrades and improvements to that site, including electrical, and we even considered disposal of gray water in this last meeting. We did not agree on disposal of gray water, so that'll have to be pushed to another meeting. And that is my report. Next, we have General Government and Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's see. So remember, I was nominated chair. That's what the note says.
Please proceed.
We had a 2-item agenda for general government. First item was the home share program that we sponsor. For those of you who don't know or need a little more background, the home share program is a matchmaking service for home providers and home seekers, and they exchange ideas and agreed upon level of support between the two. We had, since during July through December 2022, there were 26 active home seekers and 5 active home providers waiting to be matched, and 3 in process, with a total of 33 connections that have been made between seekers and providers, and 8 matches altogether. So that seems pretty positive. The other item was city is finally going to phase out Granicus, and I know a lot of people are really excited about that. We have a new system called Civil Clerk, which has been selected, and staff anticipates implementation will be complete by the second quarter of 2023, which is just around the corner. That's my report.
The next item on our agenda, wow, we finally made it to boards, commissions, and committee reports. First up is typically the mayor. He is excused absence today. I am next, and I do not have a report. Next, we have Councilmember Cox.
Okay. My first report is on yesterday's Regional Housing Council meeting. I'll spare you what we've already discussed tonight, but we did approve $2.6 million in grants for a 162-unit low-income housing project called Southport Lansdale Point. Well, Southport is the company, Lansdale Point is the complex. So half that money will be coming from Thurston County, and half of it will be coming from Olympia. And so this money will be used to leverage other funding sources. And the developer needed to have, I believe it was 5%, is it 4 or 5% local dollars committed on this in order to qualify for the state money. But so this helps move that project forward, and it's going to be an important one. As you heard, we approved the applicants, 24 in all, to the new Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and new Homeless Services Advisory Committees. Those groups are going to be onboarded as quickly as possible after the County Commission gives final approval to that list. Another one, this is a kind of a small dollar amount, but I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of this and comfortable with it. You may recall that when we were distributing our CDBG funds in 2020, our council allocated $210,326 for a Homes First project to acquire and rehabilitate affordable housing. Since then, Homes First, for a number of reasons, decided instead they wanted to use the funds to build 2 accessory dwelling units on land it owns. And Unfortunately, they ran into a snag because CDBG funds can't be used for building ADUs. So our technical team came up with a recommendation to use the 2060 recording fee fund, $107,000 out of that for Homes First to allow them to go forward with these new units, and in exchange, 107,000 of the CDBG funding that Lacey had allocated to Homes First will be directed to another CDBG eligible project in Thurston County, excluding Olympia, with a preference that it be affordable housing in Lacey. We also heard a report on the $3 million home ARP allocation for Thurston County. That's going to be posted February 20th for public comment, and then we'll go to the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development for review. And we hope to gain access to that money by late summer or early fall. And just finally on this, well, I think Rick talked about our manufactured housing study that we're going to be doing, and there was a great deal of interest in that. I don't know if you all are aware, Tumwater has actually zoned its mobile home parks for only that use, manufactured housing there, so that that purpose has to remain. They actually won a Supreme Court ruling that upheld their work. So we've agreed to keep this topic on the RHC table, and we'll update them on our progress. I think Olympia would like to see what we do on this and maybe follow suit. So I thought you all would like to know that. And we have canceled our February 22nd meeting, so the next meeting for this group is March 8th. And my other report is on LOT, Clean Water Alliance. We met on February 8th and received quite a nice overview of the biosolids and sludge thickening system improvements. The LOT is currently under contract to provide sludge to the Boulder Park agricultural area operated by King County. So this waste, once it's ready to go, is actually cleaned and actually is used to spread on agricultural lands. We also approved the Affordable Housing Support Pilot Program to provide connection rebates for low-income housing and permanent supportive housing. This is a 2-year pilot program funded at $1 million, and this would cover 300 what's known as equivalent residential units. Lacey's allotment is 75 equivalent are residential units. And there was some discussion about legal constraints around monitoring and enforcement in Lacey's urban growth area, and I think this would apply as well to Tumwater and Olympia. So it was agreed that those concerns could be worked out in an interlocal agreement with Thurston County and the other partners there. And then finally, we elected officers. Lisa Parsley from Olympia City Council will serve another year as chair, and Thurston County Commissioner Ty Mincer is vice chair, and I will serve another year as LOT's representative to the Thurston Regional Planning Council. And we also elected LOT staff members Justin Long as treasurer and Megan McAuliffe as secretary. So that's my report.
Councilmember Greenstein.
Thank you. I have just one report tonight. A little unusual for me, but it's a little longer report than you probably are used to hearing from me. Medic 1 EMS met yesterday, and it was a relatively short agenda, but there was one topic that I want to discuss and kind of make sure council is aware of because it's pretty impactful. First, Tom Carroll, who many of you probably know, was appointed as the citizen at large position, so he's a new board member there. Stan Moon was reelected as chair, and I was reelected as vice chair. The item that took up the majority of the meeting, as well as another meeting earlier in the week, had to do with the budget and some future revenue projections. So you may remember that EMS passed a 6-year levy back in 2021. The intent and the language on the ballot for that levy were that the citizens voted for overwhelmingly, was that the levy would increase by 3 cents per thousand per year for the 6-year term, getting us to a 50-cent levy rate. In the actual practice, that's not how it's operating. Even though if you read the ballot measure, it's very clear what was on the ballot, that's what people were voting on. What happened is the way it's calculated, and unfortunately, the percentage is not applied to the dollar amount, but I'm sorry, it is applied to the dollar amount, not to the millage. So what happens is there's far less revenue than anticipated for that 6-year levy period. And in fact, EMS Medic 1 is going to be short of what the anticipated revenue was by about $27 million. So it's extremely impactful. And as you've all heard me say over the last several months to years, we are already in a fairly significant healthcare crisis in our community. This is not going to help. This is definitely going to make the problem worse. We actually formed a subcommittee at this meeting, of which I'm going to be part of that subcommittee, to look at what our options are. The original wording that was proposed by EMS Council was changed at a meeting where our representatives were there, the county manager was at the meeting, the assessor, Department of Revenue, a couple of attorneys were all at the meeting, where they changed the wording, saying that the wording we had didn't meet the legal standards, so they had to change the wording, but they said that the results of that wording were exactly the same. Well, that's not exactly so, now that we've been informed by the assessor's office just in the last week or so. So there's a lot more to this, and you'll hear a lot more about this from me over the next several months. But the next step is our subcommittee is meeting next week to kind of formulate a plan. We'll probably, from that point, have the next meeting will be probably with some of the county's attorneys to talk about what our options are for how we try to rectify this, because this is a significant hit to EMS, and it will prevent us from being able to do a lot of things that were planned, including additional medic units, and so forth. So that is my report.
At the state level?
That's part of the discussion we're having, is whether we can take this to Superior Court, and so we'll know more soon. And that is my report.
So are we all going to expect higher cell phone bills and?
No, at this point, it's a property tax. It's not a cell phone bill.
Oh, it's not, okay.
Yeah, you're thinking of TCOM.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
gotcha.
different. This is property tax. So yeah, no, at this point, there's no change because it would take court action to change it at this point.
Thank you. Did you have something? Is there a question down there? No? Okay.
Because I'm disturbed by that.
Councilmember Stedman, please.
You can imagine how disturbed the people at the committee was.
No report.
Councilmember Kunkel.
I just have one report for JazzCom. We had a meeting on the 6th and just cover some brief highlights. Commission re-elected Lisa Parsley from City of Olympia as our chair. We covered our budget review and year-end review for JazzCom accomplishments. And we were updated on the continued plumbing issue that plagues the animal shelter. And it looks like we will unfortunately be looking at a major investment to fix the problem, which was something we were hoping to avoid, knowing that at some point in the future, we're going to have a new facility. That is pretty much the long and short of items covered for that meeting.
Is that the end of your report?
Yes, sorry.
Councilmember Vasquez.
I have a couple of quick reports. For Orca received a clean audit report from the state auditor's office. And actually some very nice comments from the state auditor's office about how cooperative they were and how tidy their documents were. So that's always good news for a tiny agency like Orca. We also did a review of the executive director, Jeff Johnston's performance. He's been in that role for about a year now, and he got high marks from his staff and has also made great progress towards some organizational goals. Yeah, including regional engagement. Remember, he came to this council with the fire chief to talk to us about some of the changes they were considering. So look forward to continuing to work with him. For the Thurston Regional Planning Council, we reviewed our 2023 calendar. The officers that had been serving were reelected by acclamation. So Hillary Seidel is the chair, Clark Gilman is the vice chair, and Joe DePinto continues as secretary. One of the main things that took up time during our TRPC meeting was the Deschutes Estuary update. So we had an update from DES on what the plan is for the Deschutes Estuary, which has a long and storied history I won't go into, but it was a nice report. We talked a little bit about our 2023-25 strategic plan kickoff for TRPC. So we'll be working on that strategic plan later on this year. I think starting in April is when we're all going to be getting together to talk about strategic goals for TRPC. And then for the County Board of Health, we met yesterday. It's been a long day. We issued a proclamation on it being Children's Dental Health Month. And folks from the Hands-On Children's Museum accepted the proclamation with some of their partner dentists in attendance. And then we heard presentations on integrated pest management. Turns out the county is very thoughtful about how they use pesticides and apply other deterrent measures when there are pests in the lands that they manage. And we heard some information about a new permitting pilot that they ran last year on temporary food establishments, which would be not at the level of a food truck in terms of professionalism, but something more professional or more ongoing and routine than somebody with a tent who wants to sell food one time. So they're coming up with a way that people who want to have a routine tent can sell food safely and receive a permit through the county for that. So they haven't completely built that policy yet, but it's in the works. And they're trying to make sure that they have that right balance of access for folks with safety and health. And that's my report.
Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, we will be adjourning for an executive session. This session should take us about 15 minutes, after which we will come out and close this meeting and adjourn this meeting. So 15 minutes, please. In our city council meeting, we have reached the end of our agenda, and if there are no objections, we will get out of this meeting. So thank you guys all for joining us, and it is my pleasure to say tonight, and I hope we demonstrated this, you keep it classy, Lacey, and this meeting is adjourned.